and their role in both Asian history as well as history in general. So we see here, you see a little humor here about how important it was to really notice the Mongols. We see that Genghis Khan was born in 1167. He is so significant that he was greatly underestimated by his victims, who assumed that there were millions and millions of Mongolians coming to patrol their land. In fact, only a couple of really tough guys were coming. And something to really think about is the fact that the Mongols made no technological breakthroughs, founded no new religions, wrote very few books or dramas, but yet are considered one of the most important peoples to have walked the earth. And that has a lot to do with their military. But we're gonna look and find out, why are they so historically important to us today, and why do we still study them in school? Some questions that we're gonna kind of go over and study today include: how did the Mongols govern the regions of their empire? How did the Mongols impact the regions of their empire? What was the natural cultural exchange of the empire? How did the Mongols rule and impact the future, both positively and negatively? And how and why did the perception of the Mongolians vary? So first of all, the Mongols are a Asian people that are found currently in Mongolia, but in the steppes of eastern Russia, as well as China. And we're going to note, I'm going to flip over to a map in a minute here that's going to show how far-reaching they actually could be. And they are the last great peoples that are of the nomadic world. Very, very strong group. So the Mongolian Empire is run under Genghis Khan for a long time. And they were nomadic herders, meaning that they followed the herds where they needed to go. They had social divisions, they had confederations, and they granted leadership based on merit and skill. So here's the map I promised of the different Mongolian tribes throughout the region. So very, very far-reaching, but the area that we are really going to focus on, that kind of is the land of Genghis and his family, is right over here, is what we're going to be really looking at. Oh, mouse trouble. Okay. So what would life be like under Genghis Khan? Well, he built a war machine. He had the best cavalry, and the best weapons. Cavalry is, of course, mounted horses. And this is what the Mongols are really known for, is they are fantastic on horseback. The Mongols under Genghis Khan's rule were destroying cities, and they forced cities to pay tributes, which means that once you were there, they would say to cities, like, if you don't want us to invade you, give us A, B, and C, and we will not conquer you. So they can, instead of being destroyed, they can pay. And it's not always a money thing. It could be resources or supplies. Their battle tactic, again using cavalry, using horse, was to basically retreat, which would draw the enemy closer, which they would trap the enemy there. And of course, they can't tweet about this. So, this was allowed to go on and on. Many, many people were able to fall into the trap of, like, oh, they retreated, we're going to go after them, and they would actually be there. And then here is a quote from Genghis Khan. The greatest happiness is to vanquish your enemy, to chase them before you, to rob them of their wealth, to see those dear to them bathed in tears, to clasp to your bosom their wives and daughters. Isn't that lovely? Doesn't he just seem like a really sweet guy? Not so much. So what was life like under the Mongolians? Well, why were they successful? And what would they have been like if they had kind of, what would you have liked to do if you had to live in their empire? What would be life like? So it was actually relatively positive. There was something called Pax Mongolia, which was a time of peace. Pax means peace, so a time of peace in Mongolia. There was they were not they feared religion, but they were tolerant of religion. They were also open to new ideas. They had advisors that were diverse, meaning some that were from the land they conquered, as well as some Mongolians. So they didn't just come in and put all Mongolians in control. They left people who were originally there in control. They had a strict code of law. They had peace and commerce throughout Eurasia, which Eurasia is a combination of Europe and Asia. And then once you have the death of Genghis Khan, the emperor Khan is the empire is divided, which leads to a kind of a whole weird thing. So now we're going to kind of look at how did the Mongolians conquer Eastern and Western Europe, Eastern and Western Asia, excuse me. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to drive west in the Golden Horde to Kiev and Novgorod, and the difference. So they were referred to as from hell because they were so feared. Russia under Mongolian rule led to vestiles and tributes, which is small like subsects of Mongolia. In Moscow, they prospered because they required tax collectors, and the Mongolian influence on Russia grew, both military, politically, and they became isolated even more and more from the West. So as they you know, they didn't have the power nor the resources to kind of continue into the rest of Europe. They well, I mean, so we're gonna look at the impact on the Islamic world and the adoption that the Islamic people had on the Mongolians as well. So the Mongolian insurrection retreats through the rest of Europe, and they have a Western view of the Khan, and they have the death of Ondian, which is the great Khan who comes after Genghis Khan. And the Mongolian have assaults on Islam, and they conquer Islamic Persia, which is the Middle East of today, much of the Middle East, and they conquer Islam, Astavad in Iraq, and they are defeated by the Turkish people. And we notice that Aga Khan of the Golden Horde converts to Islam. So this is very unusual for them to have taken over, to enter a land, take over, and convert to the Islamic faith. And there we have them. I think now we're going to look at what their impact in China, which is by far their largest impact. And go right into here. So the next Khan to come in was Kublai Khan, who defeats the Song dynasty. The Mongolians had a cultural distinction that was created by law. They refused the civil service exam, which means that they could put whoever they wanted in power. No new social orders amongst the elite, and then we see, so the Mongols would be the highest, the nomadic and Islamic allies, then the northern Chinese, then the southern Chinese. So that would be kind of like the order of the ranking of importance. And that is what I want to get to on there with you. I want to show you guys something real fast. Just what you wanted, a commercial.
Years of research and development. How he forged advanced high-strength steel to make the frame stronger yet lighter. The countless hours spent testing the suspension and tuning every sound from the engine to the trunk. But until you get behind the wheel, you have no idea.
Guess I'm gonna have to work on improving like
redesigned
technology where I combine a video in here, huh?
Genghis Khan was one of the most deeply feared historical figures in history that conquered a great part of the world and butchered many, many peoples.
Genghis Khan was ruthless, but he was also incredibly intelligent. When we look at what Genghis Khan was able to do, it was absolutely fascinating. Genghis Khan created the largest contiguous empire in all of human history.
The Mongols were an unbelievably effective military force.
The key of the Mongols' military success was their ability to move vast distances in very short periods of time. There would be news of the Mongols are coming, and then suddenly they were there. The principal battlefield tactic of the Mongols was to use their horse archers, who could gallop in, coming from nowhere, coming out of the dust clouds. It was like swatting flies. A fixed standing army didn't know where they came from, and they didn't know where they went. It was impossible to fight because they didn't stand to engagement.
Genghis Khan was a military genius. In addition to this mighty cavalry that he commanded, he also employed psychological warfare.
The level of intimidation that the Mongolian horde has upon their enemy is something that is projected long before you ever see the dust rising from their horses.
Imagine the sheer fear. It was so great that women would rather take their own lives and jump off the tall walls of a city than being invaded and raped and butchered.
The Mongols were masters of the siege. They built great battering rams. They had huge engines drawn by dozens and dozens of oxen.
If you were a craftsman or engineer, your life will be spared.
As the Mongols move into new zones, they learn the techniques of those zones. They want all the skills of the region that they're taking. So they learn the knowledge that they need to command the societies that they're moving into.
Once he had conquered and defeated the country or the culture that he attacked, Genghis Khan assimilated them. He actually brought them into the greater empire. In Mongolia and Central Asia, he's considered a hero and a great unifier.
Okay, so back here, to the Mongols in China, we want to think about one of the reasons why, or what we know of the Mongols, because we don't know a lot about them, or we do know a lot about them, we know a lot about them, but we have a problem when we study them. One of the main problems with the Mongols as we study them is that we get their accounts from the people who won, who were the Mongols. So a lot of things that as historians we struggle with is that we have a bias history on the Mongols, meaning that it was written by those who were defeated by the Mongols or the people who the Mongols themselves. So it's not always fair. This is just one reason why they come off so cruel. We want to think about things about them that, likely to come up on, state exams and stuff. And things to think about is that we talked about, like the Mongols, although often brutal, they were very tolerant. Let me go back to see if I can find it real quick. They were rather tolerant of religions and they encouraged trade. And that we know them to be from mostly Central Asia, but nonetheless, they also throughout Russia and China, Eastern Russia. So that's where we want to go today. All right. I'll see you again soon. How about that? All right. Thank you. Goodbye.